what are your access needs, not just in terms of being neurodivergent disabled, but being a neurodivergent disabled witch?
Hello, welcome back to Sapling Tarot, and another episode of the Cards Without, my series about tarot and neurodivergence. This is part 2 of episode 7 with the incredible Jasmin. Neurodiversity, neurodivergence, disability, educator, advocate extraordinaire. Let's jump straight into it. Did you, or have you in your life with tarot, have you found any challenges in relating to traditional or more mainstream kind of collective symbolism because of your neurodivergence, so things that don't make sense to you so much?
It's hard to know if it's the because I am neurodivergent, so
exactly.
I can't remove, but I've always had in tarot the visual representations of women in tarot are very typically feminine, thinner, right? That's why there's a tarot deck that I have. The cards are quite big, so I have small hands, so it's not as physically accessible. But I think it's called New World Tarot. It's very around social justice and things, and the body types look like mine.
The Next World Tarot.
Yeah, Next World Tarot.
Yeah, and with the giant cards. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's a really beautiful deck for me visually because it's a reminder of the beauty of the diversity of human form. So I think, with tarot, on first glance, when I think about the images, particularly of High Priestess or the Lovers or something, it's these very, again, it's like that typical waify, image. And then there's almost that cognitive dissonance in my head because I'm well, I always envision the goddess and god of these curvy, very voluptuous, because we think about the ancient symbols of the goddess have curves in the stomach. And I think that's where I'm now at a point where I'm very much into accepting what I look like. But I think that's why I came to tarot a little bit later on. I don't know if I would have had the same sort of intellectual understanding of now I can see the images and I think they're beautiful. And I really like tarot, like the Crow Tarot, where it's animals and sort of alternative things. But I think if I would have looked at these cards as a young person who was really conflicted in their body type, and then with my whole neurodivergence and all of that, I probably would have not. I don't know if I would have gotten into it as much, right? I probably would have been well, this is once again a thing that's not representative of me. This is not for me. Yeah, I think that's where sort of if there's any sort of tension between me and tarot, it's that I guess too, that's partially why I try to do tarot regularly. But there are times when, and I think part of this is neurodivergence, but also the hormonal cycle of a human, where I don't tend to look at it just because I'm if I feel less loving of my body, or if I do tarot, I may pick a tarot that's the Crow Tarot and not necessarily the traditional tarot deck of, or the Goddess Tarot, which is beautiful, but it's everybody doesn't look, you know what I mean? It's just that. So yeah, and that's just something that I've always dealt with throughout my life, and now into my late 30s and understanding my own neurodivergent brain and how that works, I've really had much more of an awakening to not just, I'm well, if I have to accept my mind and I love my mind, then I have to do the same with my body, right? It's one and the same. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's where perhaps sometimes I'm I don't want to look at the I'm just gonna look at the animals today. But yeah, I think in general, tarot, I always see it as an art form, and I'm really fascinated with the art that's used in a tarot, because each tarot card has so much symbol within it, which I think can sometimes be really overwhelming too when you're trying to interpret it. Oh, yeah. Whether it's for yourself or others. And so I don't want tarot to make my anxiety worse. Right? Gotcha. So I always kind of have to intellectualize, well, today let's not delve too deep into it. I'm just looking for a little bit of guidance, because I think depending on the tarot deck, they're beautiful, but some things can be a lot more overwhelming visually than others, because each card really does tell a story.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
my brain has to kind of chunk it up sometimes. And that depends on like if I'm experiencing pain that day, or if I'm just kind of like I'm seeking guidance from tarot, but I'm also just tired. And so kind of I'll talk to like spirit and be like, just give it to me straight, please. Like,
Yeah.
like just, yeah, don't make it complex. I'm just I just want to see like how the week's going to turn out, kind of like a horoscope kind of deal. Yeah.
Because I think different days can kind of bring up different sort of pain points or kind of pressure points and stuff, in terms of like the imagery that you would find comforting on one day could be quite confronting on another. And like, yeah, those things about like with the Smith-Waite tarot and all of these thin white heterosexual cisgender folk, like it's on one day that could just be kind of like neutral, yeah, I get the point kind of thing, and on other days you look at it and you go, oh, fuck off.
Yeah.
With if there's a woman on the card, then that automatically means that it's like nurturing and intuitive and all of that kind of stuff. And it's like on some days you could be like, hell yeah, and on other days you'd be like, stop limiting me. Why are there like 3 men to every 1 woman in this fucking deck?
Yeah. Or like what, that it's like the card the Tower, where it's some days I'm like, yeah, in collective, as Sins and Ballad would say, in collective rage and unconditional love. And then other days it's like, no, I don't.
Yeah, I don't want to deal with that today.
I want to do all that work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brick by brick. But so I think that's why I enjoy having multiple decks too, because like I'm looking now, like I have the Aleister Crowley Tarot, which can be a little bit, because knowing Crowley and that history, and like it can be a very weighted deck for me. So I got to be right time and place for it. But it is a beautiful deck. Like it's a deck that I show people who are like, a friend will mention, oh, I listened to a podcast about Aleister Crowley. I'm like, oh, let me show you. Like, this is cool, right? But it's not a deck that I necessarily read from all the time, knowing the weight of its inspiration. And then there's the little fun decks, like I have of The Last Unicorn, the movie, which I read when, like, I have a few goddaughters who, the eldest one has asked me to read tarot at her birthday, and so she's pulling cards, and it's like, well, this is fun because it's not like I'm going to pull like a spooky card for a bunch of 10-year-olds, right? Or so I think tarot is very much, it's like any sort of aesthetic witchcraft, time and place. And I think the great thing about sort of the tarot community is there's so many different decks, and the diversity of the visuals lend itself to feeling good about using it, right? It's like the Rider-Waite, the Coleman Smith, like it's sort of known as like the OG deck, but so many artists who create decks have been inspired by it and then take their own interpretations to it, that we live in a really cool time where it is much more, I think, visually accessible. And then the different sizes of decks. So, like, as much as I love this large cards, like, my hands do not, like, I'm like, how am I shuffling? So I've got to figure out a way to read, because usually what I do when I read tarot is I shuffle until they start falling out.
Me too.
It's like that very intuitive practice, whereas this one, I can't do that. So I have to figure out a way, like, I probably have to spend more time with that deck and be like, all right, how am I going to read you if I can't? That's not going to be, this is less of an intuitive thing, as maybe I'll shuffle it and then I'll pick, just because I have tiny little hands. So,
I mean, I think everyone's hands are tiny compared to that deck. Like, that is massive.
And yet it's a great deck because the visuals are so big that
you don't miss any of the details.
Yeah, and it's also, again, it's very representative of, I think, where the witchy community should go, which is like the embracing of all bodies and minds, and almost that like joyful anarchy, right, behind like anyone can be a witch, right? Like tarot can look like whatever you want it to look like. It's more about kind of the intention behind than it is about, I think if the visual connects to you, if you really like it, then that's the deck for you, right?
Yeah, I think that's the best advice on like people that are looking to get into tarot, and people are just like, oh, well, what's like the best deck for beginners? Or it's like the one you like. the one
Yeah.
that connects with you, and you might need to kind of kiss a few frogs kind of thing, and because you might like the art and then start trying to read it and realize that you don't, it doesn't like speak to you kind of thing. But it's, yeah, I think the ones that you like, it's like the thing about wearing like SPF sunblock, like, oh, what's the best SPF? The one you'll fucking wear. Like the one that you'll put on your goddamn face.
Yeah,
Whatever that is.
Yeah, same with anything like makeup, all like what's the best, whatever works for you. Like I can't tell you. It's the same with that, you know, it's witchcraft in general. It's like, well, where do I start? I was like, however you want to start. Like
what excites you? What makes you feel good?
I started because I was so little. For me, the coming into the witchcraft came from movies and TV, where I loved the Addams Family and I loved Nightmare Before Christmas, and I loved the movie Practical Magic. Like it's definitely like kind of, you know, the wafy, but that's where I was like, oh, I like the idea of a little sunroom with jars.
Yes, absolutely.
Like I don't know what's in the, you know, I love plants. So I came to it through that like visual medium. And then through there had the opportunity to, during my undergraduate studies at the University of Ottawa, to take that course that I think I mentioned last time. And that really then was like, oh, there's a whole historical legacy behind this.
Yeah.
Cool. And then even turning it into, okay, my people, my ancestors come from these lands, looking into that, oh, cool, like, you know, pre-Christian, like, whether it's Bavaria or Hungary or you know, the Netherlands, and seeing how that all, and being like, whoa, and you making more and more connections of, it just feels, it brings me joy, right?
Yeah.
And I think if tarot or any other witch doesn't bring you joy, then like, what's the point? Because it's yeah, if it we are not, I don't think witchcraft or being a witch is like, there's no dogma. There's no like set doctrine. If it doesn't bring you joy and it doesn't help you manifest like joy within community and to keep doing community work and sort of, for me, it's that if it doesn't complement my everyday practice of being an educator and wanting to incorporate this anti-ableist life practice, then why am I doing it? Like then it just becomes another obstacle that I have to break down. So when it comes to tarot, it's like, I don't do it if I don't feel like doing it. Like but it is a nice ritual practice to have regularly to sort of recenter myself on a heart and spirit level.
Yeah.
And then connecting to community like yourself and other folks, that's just been like the bonus to all of this, is like other people exist out there who have similar ideas. So when I do feel isolated and alone, I know that like, no, Imogen exists, you know, or like whoever, right? It's like, cool. Even if we don't talk, it's like that person is living and breathing and existing. Cool.
Yeah, and feeling the same way in so many ways of that shared experience. And I think a lot of us, particularly if we come from any sort of marginalization and stuff, like there is a thing about kind of outsiders that come to witchcraft, and so we're used to having to deal with things by ourselves, and so there is just that joy of the fact that we congregate around these beliefs and these views and these practices and stuff, and that we can be solitary practitioners, but we can also dip a toe in the collective, and how fulfilling that can be. And yeah, the ritual grounding thing as well, like that's definitely something I want to get more into this year, of using tarot like that, because I've kind of lost touch with doing that a bit since starting to read professionally. And so this year it's like one of my, I suppose, like resolutions of a way, is to kind of get back into some sort of like personal rhythm.
Yeah, and I think that it's that idea of like, you can, like, I think too, my practice is quite solitary. Like it's not that I have people over and we're kind of build an altar. Like my altars are mine, my practice is mine. But then like I'm connected through the digital space to other people so that we can get together and share that. So I think the idea of a coven doesn't mean it's like in a community. It doesn't mean that you're constantly physically with people or even
in each other's
digitally.
pockets. Yeah.
And I think for neurodivergent, but at least my neurodivergence looks like I can be with people and like, cause I teach. So all day I'm around. And then when I get home, there's like a lull where I'm lying flat, you know, cause I just need quiet. And, it's that thing of knowing like when to come, you know, I think we're always in community, whether we're alone or not. It's that feeling. I think being alone and feeling lonely are two different, they can be different things. So like I enjoy being alone because these days I seldom feel lonely. And I think that's that sort of double-edged sword of like social media and smartphones and the internet is I'm never alone with this thing because it's connected to all the people.
Yeah.
Which can be
over your phone. Yeah.
Right? It's overstimulating. And I think tarot is one of those things where it's like, I'm doing this on my own. Sometimes I do it with people, but I'm doing it on my own, but it's still that I always see it as like a connection. It's almost like an umbilical to the bigger community always.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I think there is a beauty in togetherness. There's also a beauty in aloneness, where it's just you, and particularly in tarot, it's you and a deck of cards, and whether you're outside, maybe in the woods, and you're literally grounding, or you're at home and you've got a nice cup of tea or coffee or whatever, right? And you're just sitting and you've got cool music on and you're just kind of flipping cards and seeing, or you bought a brand new deck and it's that thing of like, let's see I love that. Like you peel the plastic off or whatever and you open it and it's like a smell of a book. I love the smell of books. So cards too have that smell, right? And I'm like, you know, and then you open it and you're like looking at all of it, and bonus if it comes with a little book. And you read through the book, and I think that's why I really like the Wandering Star Tarot too, because it comes with a book that also every card has a quote, and I love a good quote. So yeah, our cat Pierce has, you know,
I've had that deck for years, and I'm just now realizing that I have maybe never cracked the guidebook.
Yeah, the guidebook.
I've been missing out the whole time.
It's got I'll just show you. So like, it's funny how I opened up to the Fool and the Magician immediately, the first two. But you see, they have like a little quote underneath. So she's chosen for the Fool. The quote for the Fool is from Socrates: "Wisdom begins in wonder."
Oh, and I feel like such a dick. I've never opened it, but yeah, that's great.
Yeah, for the Magician, she chose a Roald Dahl quote.
Cool.
Which is, "Those who don't believe in magic will never find it."
Yeah.
And I like, it's just so cool because this is usually a deck that I use when my friends ask me to read for them.
Yeah, it's a good
one. It's nice because it also is a nice guiding deck. It has keywords within each image, which makes things very accessible for me. But I read them the quote.
Which is such a lovely idea.
So yeah, now you're going to go back and read all, like, I just love that. So,
had that for so long. I've never looked at the guidebook. That's really embarrassing. Whoops.
But it's really,
that's lovely.
Yeah, it's really beautiful, the different quotes. And then I think like, oh, that's interesting that like Roald Dahl for the Magician. Well, like I've read we grew up reading Roald Dahl, and I'm like, wow, like, yeah, writing, when you write stories, it's the type of magic. He was very much a magician in his own right. You know, these
100%.
authors, particularly the authors that create such whimsical stories. And of course, my favorite book as a kid was The Witches.
Yeah.
I think by the end of it, I could like do the Grand High Witch speech in the accent. Like, I was like, that was my thing. It was like, "Witches of England." Like, I love, because also the witch sounds like my grandma, my Oma, right? So I'm like, okay, shout out. Like, but yeah, so again, it's that link, right? Of like, we can have a solitary practice knowing that the practices we incorporate are always going to be linked to a community, whether it's an ancestral practice or it's a practice that you have other friends and community members that also do it. So knowing that, like, you know, I'm on my own reading tarot, and across the pond, across this ocean, Imogen's also reading tarot. And that is, I think that's a really beautiful I'm a very visual thinker. So for me, that's a really beautiful visualization of like, we're all deeply connected, whether we're physically together and sort of sharing that energy, or we're just quietly doing our thing. And I think it's a very neurodivergent trait. There's always those memes saying like, it's those friends that you don't talk to for months and months, and then you just pick it up. And I'm like, that's
my kind of relationship. Yeah.
I think that's a neurodivergent. That's like something that creates that. It's the term like neurominorities. Like we have like certain cultural traits, and one of those traits is like, hey, ADHD friend, haven't talked to you in 4 weeks, but I saw a thing that reminded me of you. And I always explain to friends that don't share the same neurotype as me is, listen, it's not that you're less of a friend if I don't talk to you. It's that I have hyperfit, like I'm doing, you've literally escaped, but I will, like, you're just the same amount of friendship as we were before, right?
Yeah, and it's paused. And I think that's the thing of like, there are some people where that time elapses and things deteriorate, and that's not me. It's paused. It stays exactly as it was. And within an interaction, sure, it can deteriorate, you know, whatever. But like between, it doesn't. That doesn't happen.
It's the same with my tarot practice. I may not do it for months at a time, but I'm going to go back to it. It's on pause. I haven't lost it. And I think too, like when because I'm in a relationship with someone that's also neurodivergent, and it's one of those things where, and they also they co-parent. So it's one of those things like, even if we don't talk, it's not that, because that's a very neurotypical thing of saying like, it's constant work. It's a constant work. I was like, yeah, but sometimes that work goes on hold.
Yeah.
And just because something pauses to my brain doesn't mean that then it slowly starts to erode. It's like, it's there. Right?
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of time where I'm not doing the thing. And when we go back, it's still there exactly the way it was, to my brain anyway.
Yeah.
And so
to mine as well. And it's no, like you say, it's no marker of how you feel about a relationship. And I'm just thinking about like, you know, the idea of kind of object permanence. If I can buy my favorite food in the world and put it in the fridge, and as soon as I close the door, it is dead to me. If I don't go into the fridge and see it, I can fit my favorite food in all the world will go past its sell-by date because I wouldn't look at it.
I need a fridge with a glass door.
100%.
See-through. I was like, I need a fridge and freezer with see-through doors. Like, make that a thing. Because I now, like, I'm lucky in my kitchen, I have like, the cabinets are almost like whiteboards.
Amazing.
So I can use a whiteboard marker on these cabinets and then wash it. So I write like, take your vitamins. They're in here. Because if I don't see them, like my iron supplement, or in the fridge, I wrote like, there's grapes in the fridge.
Yes, genius. Yeah.
And there's, you know, it's like, this is what you have in the, just look. And then
the milk expires on Tuesday.
Listen, I had to throw out some yogurt today. It was really sad. So I was like, oh no, I had intentions of eating.
Yeah, good intentions.
So I think too that like within practice of tarot or any sort of witchcraft, it's like, it's not that I've abandoned it. It's just there's other things that are happening, and not just within the practice of witchcraft itself. There's things happening in life, right?
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden you got to do this at work, or all of a sudden a family member or friend gets sick or needs your help, and so I'm like, yeah, I haven't read tarot in several weeks, and people go, oh, you're not doing it. I was like, no, it's just object permanence, and I have object permanence with things and people.
Yeah.
So that, I think though, once we have the language to explain that, then it's important to explain that in community too. And that's part of our access needs. And I think we need to think about what our witchcraft practice, our witch access needs are, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to.
Oh, that's cute. Right? Yeah.
So like, what are our access needs, not just as neurodivergent people, but as people who also like, because it's part of our intersectional identities. So it, you know, and I'm trying to do it myself in terms of, because I'm part of this online community with, you know, Missing Witches podcast. And what I'd really like to do is sort of for myself, be able to synthesize in writing what my witchcraft access needs are. And then try to create, as I go forward with the practice, which is constantly, it's like a living thing, but to like be able to know what and understanding that those access needs may change, right? So, you know, you're doing these things and all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, this has been a closed practice, not for me. Okay, cool. I got to shift and change these things rather than getting defensive and, you know, spiteful. So, yeah. So it's yeah. What are your access needs, not just in terms of being neurodivergent disabled, but being a neurodivergent disabled witch, right? Like what makes witchcraft, how can my witchcraft and me being a witch be accessible for me? Because you have to make it work for you. So in terms of tarot within that practice, what are my tarot access needs? Right. And that I think also removes that shame of like, oh, I haven't done it in a really long time. Or, oh, I bought this deck and now I don't want to use it anymore. Right. Or it's, yeah, I think that conversation, like access needs exist in every facet of what we do.
Yeah, it's not just at work or like at school or something.
It's our access needs as like, as a person in a female body. I have access needs as a person in a female body. And like, especially because I am no longer, I've had sterilization surgery. I've chosen that. So I'm like, cool. Now my hormones are natural. This has been fun to figure out. You know, because I've been on, you know,
store-bought.
Since I was a teenager, been on the store-bought. And now my body for the past couple of years has been like, ooh, welcome to the natural cycle of how your body operates. And I'm like, this is neat.
Like, I've been on the same journey since the beginning of the pandemic because I was just like, well, this is going to be less, the store-bought are going to be much less relevant for the next little while. And so I've been on the same journey.
But yeah, so like what are my, and particularly with hormonal, like what are my access needs? They are constantly changing. And then what are my access needs in terms of someone who lives in, you know, who lives in Nova Scotia? Like we have to think about our access needs as ingrained within our intersectional identities, and how if our experience of privilege and oppression can shift and change, so too do our access needs. It's not just us as formal learners in a classroom or workers in the workspace, but I have access, just my human access needs on any given day. And once we understand the dynamic of that, then it's much more easy to understand others.
Yeah.
And so within the witchcraft practice, I think that's a really important part, is like, what are your tarot access needs? What are your witchcraft access needs? So that you can understand the access needs of the other members, whether it's an online coven or it's one that you physically meet. And I think it would be really cool for witchy people who are in community, like, to have those conversations, right? And also for tarot readers, you know, that's something it would be cool to start to, is asking folks who come for readings, like, what are your access needs to be here? And
I mean, that's on my like website and booking forms and everything about that kind of stuff. It's big for me.
I think that's awesome, because it's like when I go to the hair salon and they ask me if I'm having any neck or shoulder pain. Like my hairstylist says, is it okay are there any areas on your head that you don't want to be touched? And I'm like, nope, I'm good. Like, you know, I came here to have my hair touched, so go for it.
Yeah.
But that's a really excellent.
Oh, I love that.
You know, and so it's that setting up of the space and the communication. Because I think, you know, the late David Lynch talked a lot about how you don't have to suffer for your art. That's like, I think I saw an interview recently where he talked about people say like Vincent van Gogh, you know, wouldn't have made the art he made. But I was like, Vincent van Gogh didn't make his art when he was experiencing the worst of his suffering. Like, I'm sure Vincent van Gogh would have loved to not
suffer. We don't have a control group. We don't know. There weren't two, and one lived a blissed out, perfect life, and one lived a miserable life, and then we get to compare their art.
Exactly. So my thing is like, and especially I think for neurodivergent folks, especially for those of us who part of our neurodivergence is mental illness, is like, nope, my medication that I take for my ADHD and stuff, which also helps with my OCD and it helps with my just overall anxiety, doesn't make me less of a writer or less of a witch. It actually helps me because I'm able to also connect better to other people. It removes that frantic anxiety of like, constantly being on it, it helps me just go and to focus in. And whatever people need to do in order to lower that level, it's like you don't have to suffer through. It's okay. Like something, especially with chronic illness, you know, or even when I've had my tonsils removed a couple of years ago, and the doctor, remember, he looked at me and goes, "Stay ahead of the pain. Don't wait until you're
that's
in."
a good one.
And so don't wait until you're in pain to take the meds, right? And it's something that, you know, I think I've reminded, my mother's gone through a lot of stuff too. And I was like, okay, it says every 4 hours. So
You take
it's
them
been
every
4
4
hours. Take it
hours.
right
Yeah.
now. Oh, but I'm not. Take it right now. Because cortisol levels will go, you know. So it's the idea of staying ahead. Like, and again, I go back, I've been thinking about David Lynch a lot recently and watching a lot of his stuff. But it's the idea of like, yeah, you don't stay ahead of your pain, right? Like you don't have to suffer to be who you are, right?
Yeah.
And suffering it happens. It absolutely does. We all experience pain and suffer, you know, which is, I think, a normal part of existing. But I think what also is a normal part of existing is that suffering ends.
Yeah.
And for us to not suffer, we can live without it too. And if that means counseling, or if that means medication, or if that means being in community, or if it means alone time, or if it means, listen, I'm gonna just relax all weekend, and or if it means taking a sick day, or if it means like eating an entire bag of chips, like do it, right? Live intuitively, that lets you feel well, because the world right now is suffering very greatly. And part of a principle of disability justice is sustainability. So like we have to survive this.
Yeah.
If we're going to be part of the change. So it's not going to happen all at once. We're not going to like rush forward, you know, and it's not a battle. It's a slow, it's like dismantling the tower in tarot. Like, it's not this, you're going to take it down brick by brick, and you're going to, rest is really, really important. And I think letting tarot rest is equally as important as connecting with it, if that's a practice that you incorporate.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm working on not being so hard on myself in terms of that competitiveness of our imperialist capitalist society, knowing that it wasn't built for my brain or body or my gender or my, you know, so like it's not for me. So why am I continuing to try to like, you know, be a part of it? And that's a self-validation, and you know, and I find my best work is done when I'm feeling okay, like what, you know, and then I can help others, right? Because if we're suffering, how do we help, especially the young people? So like people who are new to tarot, or people, you know, we're like, yeah, I came into it because I thought it was so beautiful and a joyful experience. I want to maintain that beauty and that joy within it,
because
so
it's
that
fun and exciting,
it should be
and it
fun,
makes
right?
me feel good rather than anything else.
If it, you know, I think we can absolutely suffer enough without making ourselves suffer more. So I always say, like, whatever you need to take, like, you know, I got a tattoo the other night, and then, you know, I'm trying to like, I don't want to take, for some reason my brain's like, don't take Advil, you don't need to take that. And then like 2:00 in the morning I get up, I'm like, I'm taking Advil. So I took
take it before you go to bed, for God's sake. Don't disrupt your sleep as well.
And then I'm lying there going like, you idiot. You know what I mean? Like,
I do the same thing. Yeah.
Right? It's like, especially like, and I have migraines and stuff too. I know that, like, and it's like, the minute I feel it now, I'm like, okay, I know what I need to take. I'm going to do this thing. I'm not going to like stick it out and try to, you know, I'll make sure that I pack some of my pain, you know, the Advil, Tylenol, whatever, in my bag in case at work something, and, you know, gotta prep, got all my access needs, make sure that, you know, we have to meet our own before we can expect other people to meet ours, or whatever. But yeah, stay ahead of the pain and recognize what your access needs are, I think. And when you're suffering, it's difficult. I think for neurodivergent folks, particularly those of us with mental illness, we feel like we just have to do it alone. And But I think that's why community is so important. And it's the idea of like, oh yeah, I experienced this. Oh yeah, me too. And it's like, yeah, it sucks right now. I totally get that. Right. And I think through tarot we can connect. And then we realize, oh, we're also neurodivergent. Cool. And we're
Yeah.
also this. That's really neat. Validating each other's, not just suffering, but validating the shame in order to remove it is really important. And validating also like the hesitation. I think through any practice, like incorporating tarot, people have a lot of hesitation because they're like, well, can I actually read tarot? Can I call myself a tarot reader? It's
Am
like,
I a real reader?
Yeah, am I a real witch? Am I queer enough? Am I disabled enough?
God.
Am I am I enough? You're enough. Like, if you like tarot and you want to get a deck, go for it.
Yeah.
Like, go do it. Do it. And then you know what? You'll learn from some people that you don't necessarily agree with, and you'll learn from some people that you do. And that's the learning. I mean, I'm an educator. It's you'll get along with some of your teachers and you won't get along with others. And that's the dynamic of being a human being with 8 billion people on the planet.
Yeah, but and that continues into adulthood, and I think people forget that. They think that you have to, I don't know. That's an interesting point,
And as much as collective liberation is for all of us, I don't think collective liberation means that I have to constantly be around people who I fundamentally disagree with. As much as my work towards a collective liberation, doing what I can to be as anti-ableist as I can be, as anti-racist as I can be on any given, and continuing to learn. Yes, I'm doing it for all of us, even for the people everyone. Like all of us means all of us. But I'm not going to put myself in a position where I'm going to have to constantly amplify my cortisol levels in order to exist amongst people who don't agree with me existing. Or, it's like, cool, I'm going to do the work over here then.
Yeah.
You have fun over there. But just know that, like, this I'm doing it for all of us. Right? Yeah. It should. But, yeah, I don't like that. The constant sort of this feeling, it's like, community can be the universal community, and then we get into the smaller communities. And I think that like really core, like nucleus community, the people, like your foundation, the heart center, are the people who you do not feel like you have to constantly defend yourself. You do not feel ashamed around, and you can openly suffer both as a collective and as an individual and get that spiritual and physical hug. Right. And then from there you have bigger community and more community. But if you're looking to just say like, where is my heart community, my foundational community? It's the people that you feel like, particularly as neurodivergent people, you can be as weird as you want.
Yeah.
And without judgment. Right. And you can, when you come to oh, I'm so sorry, I'm late. It's like, it's all good. Like, come on in. And you can be yourself and wear the dress or not wear the makeup or, whatever. And the people are going to love you just the same. So I always see that collective liberation as like, it starts with the people who I think about on a daily basis, who I'm doing this for, and then it spreads out to everybody else. And some people are way out there on the periphery, but it starts here for me. And when I'm out there and I'm having, trying to have professional debate and stuff, I know that I can come back and it's there. And I think like tarot is one of those things that create that link. Like most tarot readers I've encountered, I've gotten very well along with. Like these are folks that I'm like, cool, we have similar values and understandings of the world, and we have similar like visions of what we want the world to be.
Yeah, right? And we have the shared language as well.
Yeah, and that's again that communication tool. Communication is so much more than talking, which is funny to say because we're on a podcast kind of deal. But it is. There's visual language and there's physical language and there's like for me, I really pick up on people's and like the energy, like as the kids, the vibes, right? And it's like for neurodivergent people, particularly, I guess I don't know tons about, but the community, the trauma community, I think we really, it's that like, okay, is this a safe? Am I gonna?
Yeah, it's that kind of hypervigilance thing where you end up
Yeah.
just absorbing the energy of what's going on so that you know what's safe and what isn't.
Yep. And I think at a certain point, like, I can keep fighting against that, or I can say, like, this is actually a really cool thing that I can do. I mean, sometimes it totally sucks because I got to relax. But, you know, this is actually a cool tool for me to be like, you know what? This is not the space for me. I got it. I'm going to go to the space that I feel good in. Have a nice day. Thank you very much. But, you know, that's the all the best in your future endeavors thing, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, awesome, I'm going to go over here. And then I think too, like, as an adult who works with young people who also, some of them also have, you know, we do, like, in school, we call it a trauma informed practice. For me to have trauma, it's, I understand that on an emotional level. And so there's that connection with the students of like, yep, we could push right now and really get you, you know, or we're just going to give space. And it's like, we can tell from each other, like, cool, we're giving space. And then once you feel chilled out, we can have a conversation. But people that don't have that neurodivergence, that PTSD, or that, you know, the trauma, that they tend to, that's where I kind of have to come and be like, give them space, please, because I innately understand what that feels like. Like, telling a person to calm down is not what's going to calm them down, but just
and
being
really
like,
think you wouldn't have had to experience stuff to know that that's like,
yeah,
but
right. But
anyway,
yeah, you would hope, right, that just like intellectual empathy would just help everybody, but it doesn't. But I do have the capacity most days to be kind of the intermediary, knowing that it's like within 5 minutes this young person's going to be okay, and then we can say like, hey man, let's restart tomorrow, or let's, you know, how are you feeling now, let's do something different, go back to it when you're ready. And that's what creates that relationship, and that, you know, eventually it'll be a thing of like, these things are happening less and less because that person feels safe around me and I don't need to push compliance.
no.
Because people just are like, cool, I want to learn from you. Awesome. You know, and it's the same with when I go to tarot, I have my own tarot cards read. It's that, you know, you feel that energy from the person. You're like, okay, cool. And I love when a tarot reader's like, let's just see what happens. Like,
Yeah.
you know, as opposed to, like, I'm lucky because I've never had my tarot cards read by someone who's like, ooh, someone in your family is going to get that whole thing of like, why are you going to be the one? Don't tell me. You know what I mean? And I
What am I
think
supposed
that,
to do with this information, you know?
yeah, like, and I think that sort of is kind of changing and shifting within the tarot community. I've experienced a lot less of that. I think maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, it was, I think because of cinema and movie, it was very much like, oh, you know, your husband's cheating on you because you pulled the whatever, the devil
And
card,
you're
or
like,
something like that.
wow, I got married? What?
Yeah, what are the lotto card numbers? Like,
Yeah.
I think there's a development. It's probably always been there, but I think because of social media and that digital connectedness of now, like, we're learning from each other in a much more global, like, we're getting a lot more, we're receiving a lot more, and we're able to get, there's a real solid ethical framework that I think within tarot that's really important. And also that lends itself to readers who are professional readers are very, like yourself, are very attuned to that now. And also, like, you wouldn't want to take all that on. Like, why would, like, you're, you know, so that's why when I read just informally to friends, I'm like, you can ask a question or we could just go through it. And I was like, this is just a way for us to connect and have fun. And you take it however you want to take it. I'm not going to read, you know, I never have interpreted tarot in like terrible, scary ways. Like, you know, people pull the tower, they go, oh, the tower. And I'm like, that's for me, I always see like, yeah, it's time to dismantle those, whether it's the inner tower that we've built up or it's like the system itself. Like, this is the revolution card. It's telling you like, revolutionize. If you're, you know, so you just had a breakup, like, cool. The tower's like, yeah, remove that which does not serve you anymore. Or the devil card, which I always find fun because I pull and they're like, "Ooh," and I'm like, the devil's like, do you like,
Yeah, I'm just babe, we're the queer community. The devil card is our fucking card. Like, you cannot read that as a bad card.
And I always read it as sort of like the enjoy yourself, like a little hedonism, never hurt anybody, like everything in moderation, including moderation itself, right?
Yeah.
Like go for it. And also, like, with some cards like the Wandering Star, the tarot is like this really cool lady in like a cat suit and a mask. And I'm like, it's very, very much like I get a lot of like Catwoman vibes, like, and I hear like, what's the actress who played the original Catwoman? She was also the voice of Yzma. Someone who's going to watch this is going to be like, I know who this is. Is it Eartha Kitt?
Eartha Kitt. Fuck's sake, yeah.
Is that, maybe I'm wrong?
No, it is Eartha Kitt. Yeah, definitely.
But like, she did that like the Jeff Goldblum does it too, right? Like
amazing.
And so I see that and I'm like, yeah, like live a little, like enjoy yourselves. Yeah, it's that sort of like that dynamic of there's the dogma and the doctrine, and then the devil comes and goes like, or you could like have a little bit of fun, right? And that's so I really, I think you like, for me, I just make tarot work for me, and on days where if I don't want to get any guidance, I just don't do it, right? And I think it's all about being in the right headspace. And I think if I read for people, like I have friends that I'll read for informally, and if they're having kind of a crappy day, I kind of gauge the level of crappiness, because if they're really like upset about something and stuff, it's like, maybe not, you know what? It's not for today, But if they're kind of just like, listen, I just need you to read my card, just tell, like, then I'll do it, right? So, but if they're really like triggered by something or whatever, I'm like, you know what? Today's probably not the day. Because like, it's not even that my interpretation, I'm hoping, won't trigger, but it's even the visual of the card.
Yeah, you're always dancing with a bit of probability of some slightly confronting imagery, depending on the deck.
Yeah, and even like the kind of cutesy fun decks, it's still like if you pull the devil card, people are going to be like, or if you pull like the tower mostly kind of looks a little scary, and
it does.
Or even the like the Knight of Swords is one of the knights that are kind of like really, so it's like, maybe we'll wait until you're calm, nervous system reset, stim, whatever you need to do, get it out. Maybe we just need to get together and rant a little bit instead of using the cards. And then when we're all ready, we'll use the cards, right? But so in terms of access needs again, right? It's like, is tarot something we actually need right now?
I think that's a really good question, and I think that was something that came up in another one of these conversations, was about how someone felt like they were leaning on tarot too much to the detriment of their own intuition and like trusting themselves and stuff. And I think about that a lot because I don't think of myself as a particularly kind of headstrong or stubborn person necessarily, but I don't ask people for advice very often, which is why it's quite funny that I read tarot, because that a lot of the time is asking for advice, and that's probably why I don't have a very robust personal tarot practice. It's because I think I know best.
Yes, and also it's scary to ask other humans for advice and help when we grew up being told, pull yourself up by your proverbial bootstraps. And we're constantly in competition with each other. And if I ask a colleague or whoever for help, they're going to think I'm weak and I don't know what I'm doing. And so for me, that's something to deconstruct as well, is like, okay, so community building partially is like the give and take of, mutual aid, right? And care work is the work we do. So it's, the first people we ask for help, maybe it's the people who we trust the most, right? And it's, if I'm comfortable with asking for example, like my significant other to open the jar for me, right? What else am I comfortable asking them for? I'm like, maybe it's a thing of like, you know what? I'm dealing with a little bit of a trigger right now. I'm going to go lie down if it's cool, and just, we work with the people who we're in that center with, which may also include tarot, right? Tarot is not like a person, but it's one of those things that we ask. And then we slowly go, well, maybe I'll go outside and I get confident with asking for help within my heart community, maybe then I can ask 1 or 2 questions to my boss, right? And that confident thing of like, hey, I want to ask you a question because I want to make sure that I'm doing this, you know, I want to make sure that I'm giving you the best work I can, you know.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
but it's a daily practice. And with our neurodivergence comes with a lot of imposter syndrome and a lot of what if and a lot of self-doubt and can be a lot of shame that comes along with it. But I think I think shedding of that shame is a big revolutionary act. And for people who are working on that, I always give like huge commendation, because they may not see it as a big thing. Like you asking like your boss or whoever for help may not be a big thing, but like for me, it's like, that's a big deal. You get a gold star for that. Good job.
Oh, 100%.
Like,
yeah.
So I'm all about the praise, especially around my fellow neurodivergent disabled individuals. Like, it's not praise like, oh, look, you did such, you know,
No.
but it's like,
oh,
hey,
have
man,
a cookie.
you showed up today. Well done. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it sucks today. It's really cold and our joints are, but like, cool. We got together, we had a coffee, we talked, like, nice. Or I'm proud that you decided not to come to work today and you rested, because I know that if you did come to work, you would be more stressed and that would affect my job. So like, thank
true.
you. You know, I've say to my colleague when they're like, I'm like, thank you for taking a sick day. Don't even worry about it. Like, we'll handle it. So
particularly if you're infectious, please stay home.
Thank you so much for not bringing your communicable disease to me. I appreciate not getting neurovirus, or not getting, you know. So so I think like with tarot, it's the deck has to rest just as much as it gets. I think it's important to rest it and be like, I almost think that the cards go like, thanks for like not reading today, because like we all need to rest, and that's an act of resistance. Sustainability in the practice, it's a part of disability justice, it's a part of I think any sort of revolution. It takes time, it has to be sustained over a long period of time. And if people want a tarot practice in their, whether they identify as witches or not, you know, it's a practice. And it's not like we practice to become experts. I think of it as a practice of like, it's like meditation. David Lynch and his TM meditation, it's like he did it every day. He's just like, and it's not about becoming an enlightened being. It's just about saying like, this is what makes me feel good. And now it's part of my daily practice. So if you want tarot to be part of your, for me anyway, if I want tarot to continue to be part of that practice, then there are times where the cards just gotta take a break.
Yeah, we need to not burn ourselves out on it. You know, kind of.
And burnout is really real for neurodivergent folks, right? And I'm sure neurotypical folks too, but I can only speak as a neurodivergent person with a select, like my neurodivergence is one or a few types. Burnout is very real, and my burnout comes out like a bit resentful. And the last thing I want is, I really think tarot is so beautiful, both from an art perspective and like a witchy perspective and a community, like connecting perspective, that I don't ever want to resent it. Also because I've put too much money into buying these decks. So I'm like, I love supporting the artists, but like, you know what I mean? Like I want it to last. I think it's really cool when young people, like my god kids, were ask me like, will you come and read some cards for my birthday?
So sweet.
Like, I love that. And I want that to continue. And yeah, to continue to support tarot artists instead of looking at it and being like, tarot, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to get to that point with it. So I think it's like in actual visual art, the negative space is just as important as what's going on.
Yeah.
Like in a film, it's what's not said that's just as important. That's what, you know. So I think with tarot, it's what, when we don't do it, is equally as important as when we decide to do it.
Yeah. I think it's so easy, particularly for neurodivergent folk with like special interests, to, and particularly kind of the ADHD flavor of special interest is to burn real hot real fast.
Yes.
And then for it to go. But I think I've been quite fortunate because I have that, but then I also have the autistic thing, which is where, but these things are still with me for life. So every special interest I've ever had, I'm still interested in. It's like, it's still like that thread has gone through.
Yeah.
It's real busy in here. Like,
I bet.
there's so many niche interests that just live in here.
So could I ask you a question, Imogen?
Yeah.
So do you, because I allegedly don't have autism. I'm not autistic. I do have OCD, which is interesting. There's a lot of similarities between ADHD and autism. Anyway, there's a lot of similarities between obsessive compulsive disorder and autism. I think
yes, they get misdiagnosed as each other all the time.
Yeah, so who knows? But and I have I see tarot as that healthy ritualistic thing that replaces the unhealthy sort of, I am unable to control this ritualistic impulse that I have. I've been talking recently, like with my partner, other people with, and my partner again is no diagnosis because it's the diagnosis, but for sure I would say the ADHD, the AUDHD combo for sure. Talked about like the concept of like the filing system in the brain and how I wonder, like, do you have that sort of, I guess, to like pull from like the mind palace, like where you have it all organized, or is it like an ADHD doom pile? Because my brain, when it comes to my knowledge base, is if I'm to put a visual to it, there's like tarot is like there's a deck sitting on a pile somewhere going like, and then you also have this. And when I communicate with people or I'm reading something, or all of a sudden it'll make a link to something I already know, but there's no, like, I can't go into my head and look through it's not a Rolodex. It's very much like somewhere amongst the rubble.
Yeah.
there are these things. I wonder if I'm so interested in learning from like neurodivergent folks with different neurotypes to see like, how do you perceive that sort of your special interests or your hyperfixate, whatever you want to call it, the things that bring you joy. Is yours organized, or is it more like it's just in there somewhere?
Yeah, like I think it's very like my physical space in that if it gets really, really messy, then that means I'm probably not very well.
Yes.
But I'm still never very tidy. Even at my best kind of mental wellness levels and, you know, energy levels and stuff, I'm still not super tidy. People think I am. I don't know what it is. Like, I come across as really organized and stuff like that, apparently, and I'm just like, I don't know about that. You know, ask my family, they would laugh at you. But so I think my brain it's much more like a web than a pile.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
But it's not as regimented as like a filing system. So it's kind of somewhere, I mean, I suppose it is kind of like the biggest mind map on the biggest piece of paper you've ever seen, but like in kind of 3 dimensions and stuff. And so things are linked and then linked to other things. And so like, if I have enough time, I can sort of follow a thread back. And like you, I don't have synesthesia in a particularly identifiable way, but I am very visual in the way that I think about things. And so I can kind of follow that thread in that sort of, you know, like the stereotypical crime solving board with the threads. Like I can, but I suppose that's kind of probably the closest thing to what the inside of my brain looks like, is that it's there and there are connections that have been made previously. But then what's interesting is that through periods of like really severe depression, but also some of the trauma therapy I've had, I have kind of like sort of memory loss. So it's kind of like one of those pin boards, but then like a bit has fallen down. And so there's kind of link and there's a space where something should be. And I come across them, and it's quite interesting because you shouldn't really be able to identify that you've forgotten something. But because of the web, it's like there's kind of strings falling off the board, and it's like, oh, I can see that something used to be there. And so like, and then I can kind of feel out the shape of what it is that I've forgotten. And so that's probably the best. It's like, it's neither total doom pile or filing system or kind of mind palace-y type, really fleshed out kind of almost astral place. But it's more like a really huge pinboard.
Yeah, I think I was once asked by a student about this. That's why I'm so interested to seeing how people perceive their own, I guess, mindful organization. Is I always see it as if you were to envision like one of those old apothecary shops.
Yeah.
That whoever owns the shop is a little messy, very eccentric, but has a deep wisdom. And you walk in and there's just things everywhere and they're somewhat organized. But like you, with my trauma, I also have these, like, when friends, like, I'll meet someone from high school and not have any recollection of who they are, and they have full memories about me. And I'm like, I'll just take, so it's as if some of the bottles have gone missing, but their imprint is there. So I know.
Yeah, the shadow is there, the dust print.
Yeah, and then through friends and stuff, they're like, oh, you remember this? And sometimes they're able to help me restore that bottle and put it back. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know, I guess I'll just put something else there, right? Like, I'll take your word for it. Awesome, cool, moving on. But
it's
yeah,
like there was a system and then someone else, like that apotheca's kind of, you know, niece or whatever, went in and rummaged and just kind of moved a couple of things around, and then you go back to the system and you go, there was a system. I remember I used to say, I've never been tidy, sort of organized, but very much only in my own way. Like, I know where everything is, but it's not like tidy. So I'm clean and I'm organized, I'm not tidy. Like, that's in terms of my space. And then, you know, both of those things go by the wayside. If
I'm clean and organized, I'm not tidy.
Yeah.
I love that. And that's that, because when you do like a doctorate degree, there's so much about language, right? You think about like, why am I using this word and not that word? And so I've become more aware of just the language used. And it's like, some people think clean, organized, tidy is all the same. But when you explain that, all of a sudden I was like, yes, it's like when my mother has mentioned how my apartment looks like a museum.
Love that.
Where it's like, it's clean and organized, but there's a lot going on here, right? And sometimes I think I know, like, I'm pretty sure I know where everything that I need is, except for what's in the fridge, because who knows? But sometimes I have to ask St. Anthony for a little help, right?
Nice.
So that's where, like, I wasn't raised Catholic, but you know, my mom used to say, like, well, if you lost something, just ask St. Anthony. And I love...
Yeah, the roots are deep. The roots are deep.
Yeah, and I kind of love the idea of, like, it's very polytheistic in its sense. And I like how there's female saints. And I like learning about, like, I'm not interested in necessarily in Catholic dogma or being a Catholic, but I think I have a natural curiosity, particularly when it comes to, maybe that's part of the ritualistic nature of my brain, is like, I like knowing symbols and representations. That's why I really like tarot, because there's so much symbol about it. And I really like my first degree is in classical history. So like Greek mythology, like I have now like a bee goddess tattoo on my thigh that's coming. So it's like, what does she represent to me? And like, what is the symbol? And like, I don't know, I think maybe I'd be a good detective. Like, you know what I mean? Like when you read like Da Vinci Code type stuff, it's not the best written book, but you know, I like a good quest movie where it's like the symbols of things, and my brain really, I love, I think that's why I wear a lot of jewelry and stuff too, because of and I have different, like my aesthetic matches how I feel or what I want to put out there. So the idea of the saints, it's like, yeah, there's a saint for this and there's a saint for that. And there's this, I mean, I'm not going to do the feast and everything, but I'm like, if I really need something, at least asking St. Anthony kind of, at least it recenters the brain so that I can look again. Right. And then chances are people are like, oh, I found it. I was like, yeah, because I've taken a moment to recenter. And then, you know, there's a scientific thing behind it of like stopping, recentering, and then looking again and going, oh, there it is. Right. But yeah, I think that's like with tarot and witchcraft, there's so much of that ritual and symbol and representation. And I think that's really beautiful, is because of, like, if I think of, you know, I want a representation, whether it's like a goddess or it's a divine thing or a saint or whatever, of say like when I'm especially down in terms of like trigger or having anxiety around my trauma, and then sort of experiencing that again in some capacity and trying to intellectualize like it's not actually happening, because your counselor, remember what day is it, but I go like, but then I look at like like a Medusa character or who represents sort of that like triumph, and I go like, cool, like right now I'm going to visualize, or I'm going to connect with this or I'm going to think about this, read these tarot cards in this way. And my brain really needs that like visual thing. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's like a grounding element too, in terms of not feeling grounded. And then all of a sudden you can go like, oh, I lost the thing. I can St. Anthony.
Yeah.
It's that. And so tarot too is that like, if I don't know where to turn to, maybe tarot is something that I sit and I take them, and then it's that grounding experience again. So yeah, it's just it's interesting. I like, as much as I like to talk about myself, I like to learn from others too, because like when you said clean, organized, but not tidy, now I've learned a new way to put that to people, where it's like, I'm clean and organized. I love a clean house. I mean, that's the OCD of like, no bugs in this house, right? Like it's clean, but it's not necessarily tidy. And I'm okay with that because it brings me joy, right?
Yeah.
I can't do the minimalist thing. That's like good for the people who can. I'm like, I like stuff. Like I like, it's, I think of like a Hobbit house in Lord of the Rings. Bilbo had so much stuff, and I'm like, this is my stuff.
Yeah. I like that a lot. And I think, it is interesting, like different people with different kind of neuro profiles and stuff, and the way that we conceptualize our own brains, which I mean is fascinating in itself, because it's it's the brain thinking about itself, which is just like, oh my god. And like meta. There's a lot of that in tarot and witchcraft, because you're talking about belief and symbols and associations and things. And so like, what one card means to somebody, we were talking about this earlier, about this idea of we have this kind of baseline of agreed meanings, and then there's everything else on top of that. And that is fascinating. And so, I mean, that's kind of why I'm in this space too, is because I love learning about that. And it's an easy way to ask someone about like how their brain works, because that's quite a hard question just to ask outright. But through the language and the lens of kind of tarot and magic and witchcraft, you can get to some really deep stuff, like the nature of belief and intuition and all of these sorts of things, and like people's connection with spirit, and like the collective metaphors that we've kind of agreed on, and whether we do agree with them and stuff like that. And it is really fascinating.
Yeah, and I think as an educator, I love seeing that, because at every age, like I think the state of, at any given time, everybody is educator and learner. And I have a formal degree and I teach it in a formal way, but when I look at what the young people who I interact with, who are predominantly neurodivergent, disabled young people, and they know everything about Pokemon. And because they love it, it brings them joy. And I'm like, okay, cool. How do I create the content that I want to see to like kind of make them interested, like, ooh, I need to know more about it. What do you mean? So we try to relate it to their youth culture, right? But it shows that like, and as we go, like particularly with my interests, I have relatively similar interests, but like it'll shift and change. Like I really love gardening, and recently I've really gotten into the idea of like fungi and mushrooms, which I never really thought about before. And like from there, now it's like, what mushroom do you think I could grow mushrooms somewhere? Like I have a little space outside. Is that possible? Whatever. And so it's that the branch, the tree of like interest, where it can start here and it just expands. And I find that connecting with young people, I'm like, well, if you really like, for example, like Pokemon, you may really love the concept of like, that the idea of evolution is science too. Like, check this out. Animals have evolved over time. and like
Yeah.
human evolution still happens.
We
Like,
are
what do
the
you think?
product of evolution.
Yeah, and like linking that, or a kid really loves, I have a student who really loved like high fantasy video games, and I'm like, dude, have you ever heard of Dungeons and Dragons? And they're like, what? And I'm like, you get to like make your own. It's open world,
Yeah.
but then you also make social connections with people who also love so it's yeah, I think naturally we're neurodivergent folks are really good at like linking to stuff we like.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
the
think,
connections and the patterns.
yeah, so I think like finding those patterns in particularly like non-preferred activities is also like,
Yeah.
well, if
Big time.
I clean my fridge, then I get to go buy more snacks, and I really, whatever, right? So
Yeah, if I clean but I make it witchcraft, then,
yeah,
I'm not cleaning, I'm cleansing.
cleansing the space. Or like with my tarot decks, it's like I have to dust the shelves or whatever, but like then I'll be able to look at them again and all those things. But
I get to reorganize my things.
Yeah, I get to reorganize my things, right? But yeah, I love, so that is, and I think learning more about tarot to the point where it becomes like an instinctual thing where you can just open a deck and you're like confidently reading for yourself, for others. I think for me that has happened more by just having my cards read and just talking to people about it, not simply buying a deck and like reading through everything. Because my memory like that doesn't work like that. I learn best by talking and experiencing. So even when I read something, then I'll have to like say it to someone if I really want it to be in the rote memory. So just practicing, when I started just one card at a time and offering it, like, who wants me to pull a card? Just see what happens, and that also that intuitive pattern recognition, right? Of like, yeah, the opportunities are kind of endless to a point where it's framed within yourself or the person who you're reading for, if that makes any sense. I always see as tarot going, there's so many options, but it's still within the framework of the person being read, whether it's yourself or another person. But I think there has to be sort of that accessibility in terms of tarot of like, because if someone's really looking for like, am I going to fall in love? Then it's like, I don't know. You're not going to get a yes or no from these things, right? And I know like some of us are very like, we're yes or no thinkers. It's a yes or, it's like, well, love is a very abstract concept here.
Yeah.
Right? And I work with a lot of young people that go like, how do I get a girlfriend? Or how do I get a boyfriend? And I'm like, okay, so this is an abstract concept.
Yeah, draw me a flowchart right now.
Yeah.
An infallible
step 1, 2,
flowchart.
3, right? Yeah.
And
hey,
I learned all my social skills from playing The Sims, so I'm right there with
like
them.
that, yeah. Or like watching television, or like just yeah, and talking to people who have the same interests, so you feel safe with them, and then sort of branching outwards. But yeah, so for tarot, it's that same thing of like, I don't know, it's like the interpretation is up. I think that's why between the reader and the person being read, there has to be some level of relationship. So, because if someone just comes up and they're like, okay, all right, it's like, well, all right, let me take a look at you. What is your goal, your purpose? Like, and then also I really appreciate readers that, whether it's on their websites or social media, whatever, when they promote like, take it all with a grain of salt. I don't answer certain questions. Like I am not your therapist or your doctor or your psychologist or, your mom. I love a little disclaimer that sets up like a safety thing even more, of going like, this is a really nice time to connect to spirit, but it's just a time between two people like interpreting each other's energies and working out things. So, and I think that also saves the reader from taking all of that on, because like secondary trauma is a real thing of like,
yeah, it can get pretty heavy.
Yeah. Right? So it's also that setting up of like, this is the intention, right? Like, disclaimer, this is not, so that I'm more attracted to getting my cards read by people who are very transparent like that, and then you can, as a client, you can pick and choose. I think
exactly. That kind of repelling content of, I'm actually saving us both time by saying I don't do XYZ readings, because if you want that, then you can go and find somebody else, and if you're happy to see that I have a firm code of ethics, then welcome on in.
Yeah, and I think any sort of because I see tarot as like a spiritual practice. Any sort of should have an ethics code and a content warning, because people, if someone's coming to you professionally or whatever to ask for tarot, like they're open to the idea that this is a thing that can help me, which it can't. I think it's a nice guide to use and a nice tool to use to connect, but also like you said when you were talking about saying like some people go down that rabbit hole and then that's all they're like, should I go to work today? Flip the card, right? Or like,
Put the thoughts back to sleep.
yeah, I was like, should I pay my bills? Or like, should I divorce my husband? And it's like,
oh yeah,
don't ask you know what I mean? Like, don't make it the whole thing. It's one part of the web of access needs, potentially.
Yeah, and I
right?
think using tarot to develop your intuition and to develop your trust in yourself is really great. Using tarot instead of your intuition or instead of trusting yourself is a bit tricky. And I think you probably need to have some conversations with yourself to figure out which you're doing.
Yeah, like why don't I just trust my gut instinct on this? Right? And again, that takes a lot of work because we live in a society that's pretty hell-bent on dividing the mind and body constantly, and also pretty hell-bent on making sure people literally deform their bodies to look a certain way and their brains to behave a certain way.
Yeah, we're all starving, we're all sleep deprived.
Yeah, we're overworked and underfed. And you can't replace a solid meal with an Ozempic injection unless you're diabetic. Like, you know what I mean? Like so it's all, and we've been here before, right? The world is cyclical in its sense of like, I always look at body type, right? Like when people were getting thinner, we're heading into another, when people are more robust, it's because we're living the high, and everything's good. So yeah, but we have to, that's why I like the term like body mind, because it's the same. Your brain is not in fact separate from your body. Your body wouldn't exist if it wasn't for your brain, right? So, and that's really difficult I think for neurodivergent disabled people, regardless of what your disability is, whether it's a non-apparent disability like autism or it's an apparent disability like being a wheelchair user, because of ableism being so attitudinal and systemic, we deny, we feel shame, we try to avoid, we try to, it's that mask, right? And I think if tarot is contributing to the mask, it's not something's happened. Maybe you need to step away. But if tarot is helping remove the mask, then that's a good thing. So I think at any given time, it's like, am I using tarot to continue to mask? Is this contributing to the issue, or is it helping me dismantle what I need to in order to be my full self? And I think every sort of witchy, weirdo, whatever you want to call yourself, right? Like spiritual person needs to say, like, within your practice, which is awesome that as witches we get to kind of make a practice work for us without, patriarchal notions of good and bad and shame and, stuff. But I really don't think there should be an element of punishment and reward to it, which there is in a lot of dogmatic religion. There's punishment and reward. And I think the reason why, the point of, particularly, like, I was never raised in a dogmatic religion, but the point of coming to witchcraft should be to liberate yourself from that. So I think if tarot is going to be something that we use within this deconstruction of that, then tarot shouldn't be punishing and rewarding us, right? It should be in a way like with disability. Disability it's not like disability pride. I always say, like, pride does not mean joy all the time, right? Like it's not like we're going, I'm so happy. Like, I'm totally cool with it. Some days it's a neutral experience. Some days it's a negative experience and I wish I didn't feel this way. And some days I'm happy and it's great and I'm very proud of who I am. But it's ebbs and flows. And the book Crip Negativity by J. Logan. I forget to say their last name. Smilges. It's a great tiny little book, but it's about this big. I have it, and it talks about like, yeah, negative feelings about our neurodivergence is just as normal as the positive feelings, right? And you're still like, disability pride is still for people, and disability justice is still for people who don't want to be disabled anymore, right? And like, that's why I say, like, tarot should be for everybody who wants to do it, and people who mentor people in tarot should also. I think my biggest fear always with mentorship is like, okay, how much of it is going to turn into this dogmatic thing of do this, not that, versus like, let's talk about intuition and interpretation of these things, and let's understand that tarot, as much as there's like minor arcana, major arcana, this many there's sort of a foundation, it's still a very artistic, abstract, flexible thing. Like it's a I think tarot in a lot of ways is a living thing, right? It's because there's always new decks coming out and people doing different interpretations, and it's nice to also see tarot be created and taken up by like non-European people, right? Of like how they incorporate different cultural practice into a tarot deck. I think that's really cool, is to be witness to that and say like, yeah, let's make this universal. This is not closed practice stuff.
God,
Right?
no.
Like if it's available at your local bookshop, go for it. Right? You know what I mean? Like check it out. And I think also that'll quell sort of that fear behind tarot reading, and that sort of the villainizing of tarot, like any practice. I mean, at one point everybody thought yoga was terrible, you know, like the practice, and I'm like, it's stretching my body, that's what I do. Like, so it's, yeah, just people can relax around this, right? In terms of like, and if you're not comfortable around it, that's fine too. Like, I'm not going to force, you know, but also like, it's just it originated as a card game, so let's chill out about all this, right? Like, humans put meaning into things. The thing itself doesn't just appear out of nowhere with a meaning. And so I think that's what I love most about tarot, is I can use it how I want to and need to use it, and I can choose not to use it too, and that's fine, you know.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for that. It's been such a joy to get to speak with you and to do this kind of interviewy stuff. Thank you so much for coming back again to do follow-up questions after I had to like leap away last time. But yeah, this is, I mean, as we have illustrated, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours.
Listen, thank you so much, Imogen, for choosing to indulge in my neurodivergent passion of rambling on.
It's delightful.
And also, anytime I get to talk about witchy, cool stuff, I think it's neat. That's fun too. And it's just been a joy, and also to make connections. Like we've made that thread between us, right? As far as we are physically, it's like that's another Imogen and Sapling Tarot. That's another person and another work that, like, cool, I know another person now, and I think that's the circle ever gets bigger, and I think that's a good thing.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much again to my unbelievable guest, Jasmin. What an just incredible font of wisdom and fun and insight, and I cannot get over how good this conversation was. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you are taking really good care of yourself, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.